with this very informative session on transforming the B2B landscape with real-time payments. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome up on stage our moderator for this session, Winny Patro, the founder and CEO, Recordent. Let's have a round of applause and welcome Winny up on stage, please. Thank you so very much. And let me now welcome all our esteemed panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Siddharth Rungta, the Managing Director and Country Head at Global Payment Solution India, HSBC. Let's have a round of applause and welcome him up on stage, please. Thank you for joining us, sir. I'd like to welcome Mridula Iyer, Managing Director and Head, TTS South Asia, Citi. Let's have a big round of applause and welcome her up on stage. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. We'd like to welcome Srikrishnan Harihara Sarma, Managing Director and CEO, Karnataka Bank. Let's have a round of applause and welcome him up on stage. Thank you for joining us, sir. And I'd like to welcome Angshuman Chatterjee, Product Head, Payment Business, HDFC Bank. A big round of applause, please. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to commence with that session, and I'd like to hand over to our moderator, Winny, to kindly take this forward, please.
Thank you for the introduction. I think we guys are sort of between the session and the lunch. So I think we've got about 45 minutes, so thanks for the introduction. So therefore, we're not getting into sort of individual introduction to save the time, so rather we got to be focused more on the topic. So the topic is talk about how a B2B payments can be transformed, especially we're talking about the real-time scenario B2B payments. So we have today the speakers representing the banks that HDFC, Citi, HSBC, and Karnataka Bank. So I want to sort of set the context to start off and then probably dive into a question. I think we all have seen the last decade, or rather the 2010 to 2020, how the transformation has taken place with respect to the way the payments have been made in the B2C space or in the P2P, in the last miles of the country. There's been a phenomenal transformation that have taken place, how the payments are being made. In fact, we can't think of managing COVID had the UPI or contactless payments have not been there. I wonder how we would have sort of managed that whole crisis. But when you talk about the B2B aspect, I think it's a very different scenario and very different challenges. And we know for the fact there's a large segment of obviously the B2B and goes on credit, right? It's largely a credit sector. So the whole value chain, if you look at the last mile of the value chain, is sort of almost digitized. We can proudly say that in terms of the magnitude of the transactions that are taking place at the last mile of the value chain. But until that point, like right from the manufacturer to the distributor and the wholesaler and the large corporates, or you talk about cross-border payments and so on and so forth. So that is something still to be sort of transformed. And a lot of it goes on credit, as I pointed out. They're not real time. They're not as seamless as the B2C. So I think the next 35 to 40 minutes that we have before we open the questions in the last 5 minutes, I think we'll delve into each one of their experiences and how they've seen the space evolve in the recent past, and then how things are shaping up, and also sort of touch base on the challenges. So first, I think, I'd sort of open the question to start with HDFC. Angshuman Chatterjee is representing HDFC to start off with. What is that you have seen alongside the transformation that's happening in the B2Cs, but what is that you've seen that's happening in the B2B space, Angshuman?
Thanks, Winny. Thanks so much for calling us here. I think what we are seeing over the last 1.5, 2 years, we have been delving deep into the B2B segment. And, as a bank, we have the entire range of the products which we, cater to the B2B. So what we said, and when we went out in the market and saw what they really need, is that That there is a like a B2C is a very linear payment ecosystem. You buy stuff and pay for it, and there's an acquiring framework, a POS terminal, and a UPI powering all the transactions. B2B also has an ecosystem. So what we did was we tried to understand from our customers that what is exactly that they need, okay? And we built a solution around it. So what we see on the B2B, okay, whether you call it a relation between a buyer and a seller, whether you call it a account payable, account receivable, whether you call it a vendor payment, whether you call it a payment to the statutory needs of a corporate, okay? We saw that we have to build it in a way that we are able to give a solution to the entire ecosystem. And each of the B2B, like we work very closely with the SME, MSME, and the large corporates as well, we've seen that what the need is one, the money flow which needs to be reconciled along with the invoices and all the necessary documentation that happens with it. So what we are trying to do in the space, and we have been fairly getting a warm response in the market, what we're trying to build is a kind of a platform which we offer to our buyer and the seller, okay? So the buyer would be able to onboard the entire group of the companies from which they are buying from, okay? All the platform is enabling is one, it is able to move the payments and also even ask for a payment from the buyer. Say a simple example I'll give is like we have the distributors in the country today, okay, which has a set of the retailers, okay. So this platform is allowing the distributor to become a merchant with an acceptance framework, okay, doing a completely a collect call automated with the invoices to the retailer, okay. And the retailer is able to use his form factor for payment, which he was doing any which ways, whether it's on a card or on an UPI or any other mode of transactions. And what is helping in this B2B space is that along with the payment movement, okay, we are being also able to give a very digital way of reconciling all the invoices. And that perhaps is fueling multiple use cases across the SME, MSME, and the large corporates. So backed by an acquiring system, backed by this platform, and by the flow of the money, we have been able to push a lot of B2B in a very structured way. And end of the day, we see that once it moves in a structured way, automatically certain amount of invoice discounting is also coming into shape, and there are takers to pay it early and get certain discounts on the invoice. So this we are seeing as a kind of an expanding use case, and as a bank we are already drawing about $3-4 billion on this platform alone in the last year. So and we see that these use cases powered by a platform of fintech and by the way that the bank is also been able to give the various modes of credit, it should be continuously growing, and we hope to see the space growing to 2x and 3x even this year itself.
Thank you for that, Angshuman. In fact, quite a interesting initiative because the space is so much it's like a greenfield I would call, but then there's still a long way to go. So Mridula, I think in pointing to you, I think you've been in the banking, and especially with Citi for so long, and then the fact that the large corporates, especially the B2B payments, just doesn't mean it's all about small and medium, but the large corporates, have you seen how things have evolved in terms of the challenges that there were, and then how there's being addressed, or how Citi is able to front end some of the innovative things that are taking shape in the B2B space? Yeah.
Thanks. I think the term "so long" is quite important in this context, because we were just earlier discussing all bankers and probably association of couple of decades in this industry, right? And why that is important is because we've probably seen the whole transformation. You roll back 10 years, this whole B2B ecosystem was so dominated by paper and checks and cash. and you look at it today, it looks and feel a far more digital ecosystem, right? Of course, powered by all the digital payment solutions that we have today, but still it has been a great progress in the right direction. But I think it's too early to sort of paint this sort of a picture saying that the B2B ecosystem is digital. I think from where we operate and our set of customers and the way we've seen the market, a couple of reflections and couple of thoughts, right, when we look at the B2B ecosystem. One is the B2B ecosystem in terms of its digitization or the way adoption of digital is not at all homogeneous, right? I mean, you still have a very small portion of businesses, especially the large corporates or even the medium corporates, who have adopted digitization in some form or the other, either end-to-end automation or even the digital payments. As you go lower to smaller businesses, etc., you still find that even in the payment systems, they are largely physical, check-driven, even today. Like, just take an example of how when I look at the ecosystem of clients that we operate in, on the payment side, 99.9% of our payments is all digital. But when I look at how our customers are collecting, there is still a lot of check that we still have to kind of process every day, which shows that your retailer, your dealer, your distributor ecosystem is still predominantly, there is a fair amount of paper. So that is one nuance and a challenge. So there is no homogeneous adoption of digitization in the B2B ecosystem. The second thought that I think COVID the pandemic sort of accelerated digitization, but what we've seen is some industries have responded to digitization a lot faster, and the speed has accelerated in the last few years. I think a case in point we've seen is the pharma industry. Traditionally very driven by checks. The entire transactions used to happen on checks, in fact, even post-dated checks, right, for a very long time. But post-COVID, we are seeing that the dealers, the distributors, the entire ecosystem have started adopting digital payments, especially the NACH and the e-NACH solutions powered by UPI have been instrumental in sort of digitizing the whole payment flow between the clients and the dealer-distributor ecosystem. Now, this means that it has brought in a lot of efficiency in the working capital cycle for both of them. You no longer need to wait for payments to get cleared before you get your next supply. That is one change that we have seen, which is very industry-specific. The second change that we have seen in mindset or the way businesses have responded to digitization is that there's a lot more value now being attached to information flow. Of course, the credit and when you get the money is important, but I think a lot of businesses are now sort of taking their decisions on supply, etc., based on credit information. So how a bank is connected with the business through APIs, etc., where you can give them credit notification of the money coming into the account or realization is becoming super critical for them on how do they manage their supply chain ecosystem. So that is another big shift that we are seeing in the ecosystem, in the B2B ecosystem, right? And the third point I will say is that when you look at the entire B2B ecosystem, payments is a very, very small portion of the engagement between buyers and suppliers. There are multiple processes prior to the payment being initiated or received, and several processes subsequent to that, right? I mean, starting from your entire invoice generation, your order generation, how do you connect with the bank for ensuring that your payment files are sent to them? The pre and the post is not yet automated in a big way. That's the way we are seeing. And that is where I think the real opportunity is there for banks and fintechs to come together and work. But that is how the B2B ecosystem, I would say, that is transforming. It is moving in the right direction. Businesses are now far more open to using digitization and digital solutions. It's going in the right direction, but definitely a lot more opportunity for all of us to do a lot more in this space.
Thank you, Mridula. I think taking the cue from what you said, the large corporates did definitely take time and they're still running on checks, but you said pharma has been sort of taken up and then changed the way they operate now. But I think we also look at, right, I think the platform that we run when we talk to sort of medium to large corporates, the aspect of digitalization, of course, in the mind it is there, but there is still somewhere there is a block, whether it is the team or whether it could be their the way they wanted to operate, a long-standing relationship with the buyers. There is so much, I think, but there is a lot of things have been done by the ecosystem or regulators to enable, the digitalization or real-time payments. So with that, I think I come to Siddharth. Siddharth, being the HSBC and you were talking about how still things need to be sort of evolved, especially from the kind of challenges that are still there in terms of achieving the actual real-time payments, right? And I want to see how you want to sort of touch upon this and throw light on it.
Sure, thanks, Winnie. And first and foremost, thank you for having me here. And thank you to the audience to be here and give their valuable time to hear us. So I think I'll echo most of the points made by Angshuman and Mridula. Moving on to the challenges, I would like to break it into two parts. I think Mridula alluded to it. So for B2B payments, unlike B2C payment, okay, there are two aspects. One is moving money from point A to point B, okay, which is where, let's say, the real-time aspect comes in, and which is probably more important in case of B2C. But the second aspect, which is absolutely critical, is how you're moving information also, from that point A to point B along with the funds, and that also needs to be real-time, and hence that end-to-end automation is absolutely critical to have that true real-time aspect getting realized in the B2B space as well. So let me talk about the fund movement first, okay, in terms of moving money from point A to point B. I think as Mridula alluded, we've seen that across the corporate space, whether it's small, medium, or large, there is definitely a shift from paper to electronic. And while that shift happened much earlier in terms of making payments, because that's where you have control and you can adopt, the various electronic options available, which is your RTGS and EFT to make those payments. But when it came to receiving payments, again, that's what has taken a lot of time in terms of corporates being able to shift to receiving money electronically. Now, while that shift has happened, I think in the last couple of years, what we are seeing and some of the initiatives taken by RBI is not just stopping at electronic rails like NEFT, RTGS, but making it actually 24/7. And RTGS is real time and NEFT is almost real time, but making it 24/7, we are seeing that is actually making a difference in terms of how corporates are now looking at leveraging it. Imagine that it doesn't need to be working hours. It doesn't need to be that, okay, if it's a second Saturday, if it's not non-working Saturday, you're not able to get your dealers to make payments through NEFT. So that 24/7 element, I think, is a big shift which the regulator has made in terms of driving the real-time payments. And I think it has a potential for an impact on the B2B side as well. We are seeing a few corporates, especially in the consumer goods space, leveraging it. But the challenge is that I think we still see the broader ecosystem taking time to adopt it, to actually make their systems or their offerings to corporates also truly 24/7, across all these payment rails. And I think that is one thing, if it's adopted across the ecosystem, will really propel the real-time aspect in the B2B space as well. Now, on the information side, I think what we have seen, as Mridula also alluded to, is that a lot of corporates are investing into their systems and platform to achieve that end-to-end digitization, automation, to be able to consume information, without any manual intervention, do the reconciliation in an automated manner. And I think that's where, at least from our perspective, from HSBC perspective, and I would say pretty much most of the banks on the street, it's not just from an HSBC point of view, there are a lot of solutions which are being focused upon, which are being offered to help corporates do that. And I think the technology is being leveraged, whether it is APIs, to be able to give that information also on a real-time 24/7 basis, or even using, aspects of machine learning, okay, or OCR reading, to be able to read advices, to be able to consume information and automate or, get that information onto your ERP systems. Because for large corporates, the scale is very different. We're talking about, if not millions, lakhs of really transactions or line items coming in. And how do you really digitize it, make it smart in terms of consuming that information? That is also a very critical aspect of achieving the true digitization or real time in the B2B space.
Thank you, Siddharth. In fact, the point that you brought in, which is point A to point B, moving money from point A to point B, I take that point into what happens largely in the B2B space. It's not a cash and carry. In reality, it's not cash and carry. I'll give you a cash and, I take the product, you can't, right? For example, let's say a manufacturer is sort of selling a, let's say, electrical overhead crane, and then it needs to be dispatched, and it needs to also move from A and B. There is so much sort of happens between right from the PO to getting the product, and it's just not. So payment is one part of it, but there's so much happens around it, right? So when there's so much happen, there is a factor of trust comes into the picture. There's a factor of risk comes into the picture. There could be risk in transit or a trust in parties. All of that comes into the picture before actually money moving from one point to another point. But I think the way I sort of look at it is the ecosystem as such. Especially coming to Srikrishna has sort of spent, right from the beginning days of HDFC and then a startup bank to Karnataka Bank. How do you see the whole of the ecosystem coming together in transforming this landscape? Because it's just not about one bank, or it's just not about one aspect of it that is, changing, right?
Thank you, Winny. I think, all the three big banks on my right have alluded a lot to everything related to B2B payments, and then, how each one is trying to capture market share and so on. So that's very interesting, because the game continues and will continue forever. But I think, I need to take you back on the memory lane a little, back all the way to 95, when we started HDFC Bank. So one of the best B2B solutions that got created is nothing to do with the corporate side, it's actually with the capital market side. And this is where the ecosystem play really happened, where it was just not a combination of what a bank did with the customers, but also what National Stock Exchange and the BSE did with their brokers. And then how each one of the participants in the whole value chain actually got together. Now, those were the days, so that, if you want to recall, some of you might not be in business those days, but I'm just telling you, it might sound that I'm a little old man here. But let me also tell you that those were the days when the shares were actually in physical form, trading was in physical form, it was the outcry system. And Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange, which went digital in the form of a lot of computerization. But National Stock Exchange compared to when BSE was advanced, but BSE had the outcry system, where each share and sale and purchase used to be recorded on small chits of paper by brokers, consolidated by the end of the day at their respective offices and settled. Risk was high, but then settlements were going on smoothly. But at that point of time came in NSDL, which is to demat the entire shares in this country, which was a public partnership. So the public partnership came in, at which point of time there was a complete dematerialization, which is electronification of shares. But then what did not happen, which is the matching of the share movement, which was happening digitally, but matching the fund movement was not happening digitally, because all the brokers were collecting checks from the respective consumers who were trading, and then each of the brokers had to settle with the respective exchanges and so on and so forth. Now the trading cycles were T+5, T+4, and then they started bringing down to T+1 and T0. Now, so what happens is that if you really look through, there was a solution in which there were 5 participants. The 5 participants included NSDL, NSE and BSE on one side, then the banks, the brokers and the consumers. All of them went digital by means of electronic transfer of funds for each of their positions, whether it was a buy or a sell. Now fast forward to now, the situation today. Now a bank like us, which is a very small regional bank, now we want to collaborate a lot and make use of the ecosystem. Now it is a very, very simple question that we have to answer here. Do you want to build everything yourself and do exactly how these larger banks on my right side are doing? Or we do something which is like, very innovative, and we partner. And I think, there's no question about it. There's no choice left. So we want to partner. So this is exactly where, the experience that I've had with initiating and co-founding a fintech comes in, which is exactly, and the fintech that we actually co-founded is perhaps one of the largest B2B fintechs in the country today. Now they have a stall downstairs, just to let you know. So we were very happy actually I was very happy, pleased myself when I walked in. I could see Karnataka Bank branding and Vayana branding on the other side. So Vayana is the name of the company that I was part of, and we had co-founded along with the current CEO. Now, what happens here is that when Vayana was calling on banks in the initial stages, the banks were not ready for adopting. And the reason is that it was held as too ahead of time. But the world around changed. The world around changed so fast that whoever did not adopt was left behind. But on the other side, seriously, that Vayana moved ahead. And this is typically the situation today. The speed at which everyone is traveling is much faster than what it was even 10 years ago. So which means that we need to kind of collaborate. And that is the principal concept that, at Karnataka Bank we have taken. And that's the reason for the first time we are participating in a global fintech festival here. Now, I think that the only way that we will be able to do is to leverage the ecosystem, leverage whoever is there are the critical players so that we present a consolidated solution to all aspects of the industry. So we have one more partner with whom we have co-founded, and we actually have done a solution for the dairy movement, and they are downstairs. In fact, we do the entire dairy supply as well as the buy side for Karnataka. And here again, it is fully digital. So this involves a lot of market price discovery. This involves a lot of supply. This involves a lot of credit also. So what happens is that there are multiple factors to this whole ecosystem. One is payments, as some of the earlier speakers said. The larger pieces are related to credit, which is delivering credit digitally. The third part is everything to do with capturing the entire chain, which is like making sure that who are associated with that flow are also part of the entire system, which is that wherever that the flow happens, a bank has to be present, whether it is physically or digitally. So in this world of computing and networking, I think the branch concept for most of this are really thrown out of the window. The reason being that, when we actually get into a deal, we implement it centrally, and then we actually make sure that the branches are just mere participants, just like the rest of the other supply chain participants are there. But there is a branch element to it where customers in that value chain contact the branches, and which is important for us. But then, is branch the leading force to it? No. So the world has changed around us, where the branch also are one more addition to this entire ecosystem chain. And the last part is that everything is digitally delivered. The last mile credit, everything related to B2B. So it is no longer a B2B play. It is a B2B, which is the starting point, but then goes on all the way to a B2B2C. And then make sure that there are some C2C also happening, because at the local end, there might be some other buyers. So we will have to kind of provide solution to them. So our overall objective is very clear, that we have to capture this in entirety and not necessarily looking at this, multiple smallest pieces to this whole chain. And we believe that, if you capture a particular vertical, we would capture it in entirety. We are working with multiple verticals and multiple partners now. So this is the second fintech collaboration event that we are holding. One we held in Bangalore, and which was 2 months ago, and immediately now we are holding it at Mumbai. We want to invite a lot of fintechs to partner with us. We have the open integration, so we have opened up at least about 350 to 400 APIs in the bank, in line with the global principles of open banking. And this is something that the bank is very, very comfortable with. Despite all the security threats, we believe we have a good CISO. So we believe that we will be able to kind of definitely stand to any such threats that might happen. But despite all these things, we believe that we are on the right path as far as our entire ecosystem play is concerned.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Sorry, Winny, I just want to make one comment. I think I can safely say on behalf of my colleagues
I'll
here
come there.
on the other banks as well that all of us partner with fintechs.
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Because I don't want anybody to walk out of this room and believe that these banks don't partner with fintechs. I think in today's day and age, the pace at which technology is going, I think it's not a luxury anymore. It's a necessity for the banks and the fintechs to really work together and deliver value-adding solutions to our...
You give us a chance, yeah. So
Siddharth, on that point, how about looking at banks getting collaborated with other banks? That's exactly the point that...
Want me to answer?
Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant question. The banks have to collaborate with each other. I was saying the same thing in our session earlier when I said that digital has opened up several opportunities. Earlier, there were this very closed loop kind of systems which were there, and each bank had their own solution which was running with their own set of customers or supply chain partners. And over a period of time, there are some NBFCs which came in, and they were again running on a standalone basis. Fintechs were running on a standalone basis. From our perspective, we believe that multiple banks, multiple NBFCs can come on the platform, and this is something where each one has got their own piece of cake to share. And we believe that the fintech collaboration need not be exclusive. This is a world of complete openness, and there is no reason for any exclusivity here. So we believe that we should partner with each other, working on each other's strengths rather than competing with each other on many such fronts.
Thank you so much. In fact, very encouraging to sort of hear it from you, sir, about how Karnataka Bank is looking at collaborating, because most people in the room or otherwise have a certain perception around banks like Karnataka Bank and state-level banks. They're not sort of open and they're not new age and all of that. I think all the best and great. I think we'd love to see a kind of transformation that will take place in Karnataka Bank.
So just to let you know that this is the 100th year of the bank, and on the 100th year, we have declared it as a startup bank.
Yeah. Great. I think we've got less time. I think we will have questions open to the audience. But before that, I have one last sort of quick thing. The point that especially I'll come to you and then probably move on to it quickly. So you said HDFC has sort of built something, right? And then how much was the involvement from the ecosystem and from HDFC? If you can put it like a percentages wise.
See, I think it is. See, today in this country, partnerships, fintechs, banks, and scale. These four are kind of given. It's going to happen. It's only going to increase. And I think we are also very thankful to the regulator to create such an ecosystem, so that we have a lot of gratitude.
Right.
So we have worked internally with the various banks verticals, and we reached out to the customers. And the kind of need and the want we saw for this particular program, how to manage a B2B ecosystem, and to be in the part of that payment flow was extremely important for the bank. So I think it happened over the last 2.5 years, and now it is completely.
Was it completely inbuilt?
Completely inbuilt with a fintech, yes. And absolutely. And we have this fintech also working with us with the kind of a cadence and the kind of a fiscal prudence that the company would want us to have, okay? Which means, understanding who are the partners or the vendors who have been onboarded in the system, their checks, measures, risk parameters, all of that put together. It was actually a very, a nice way to come out of the ecosystem. And now we have a kind of a business model which we can really scale up and look forward to giving it to customers that way.
Got it. So it was more of a inbuilt by the fintech for you.
Absolutely.
And your involvement more strategic than the implementation side. Mridula, I come to you. So is it right to say there has been a sort of a cultural change in the banking sector or from the bank that you come from in terms of opening to collaborate? Because banking has always been a very regulated, space, right? When did you see that happening? Which year, if you can recall?
I think it has been a slow change over the last 7-8 years, I would say. One is the ecosystem has sort of ensured that you change, right? And as Mr. Krishna mentioned, that if you did not change, then you would have been left behind and you would have perished, even for large banks, right? So I guess it has been a slow process over the last 7 to 8 years, I would say. It is becoming more visible now in the last 3-4 years because one is pandemic sort of made it visible to all of us. Second, I think just in our ecosystem, apart from the various payment solutions, I like the way we are building everything, right? These are all coming up as open repositories, open network, whether you take OCAN, ONDC, the GST framework, that itself is giving you adequate grounds to collaborate and innovate and partner. Because the stack is common, anybody can come onto that. Banks can partner with fintechs, with non-bank companies. So I guess in the last 3-4 years, we are seeing an acceleration in the whole ideation and collaboration. But the thought process has been there for a very long time. And we're lucky to be in an ecosystem which is giving us the foundation to be able to build new solutions and products. So that's the way I would put it. Right?
Fantastic. Coming to you, Siddharth. So there are a lot of fintech startups are also here and also in the event they're participating. So when bank collaborates with the fintech for building a solution, right? How easy or difficult it is for a solution to sort of take it cross-border because you have presence across multiple countries, right? As large banks, and then how do you see that happening? Is it, or have you also seen, foreign-grown products or foreign-grown solutions with your bank coming into India or homegrown going out of the foreign land?
I think it's an interesting question. So in terms of collaboration with fintechs, probably I'll steal that question which you asked, Mridula, before I answer specifically your question. So we've been partnering with fintechs globally for probably a decade or so. Okay, and when we partner with fintechs, we always have a global picture or global perspective in mind. The idea is not to partner with them and get their solution to our client in one country, because typically our clients are multinational, which means they will be in multiple countries. They expect us to give them a certain consistency of solutions across multiple geographies. And hence, we always look at the parameter that can this solution be replicated in multiple countries when we are partnering? And that's been our philosophy when we talk about global partnerships. I think coming to India, slightly different flavor, and probably 2016 was a bit of a watershed moment when the UPI came in, and I think Aadhaar really reached its potential, and the whole fintech ecosystem started developing. And a lot of things which are today happening in India are way ahead of a lot of other countries and geographies. So in India as well, we've been partnering with fintechs over the last few years. In fact, the payment gateway, what we have, is actually based on partnerships with fintechs here. Just yesterday, we launched something around ONDC, again, partnering with a couple of fintechs. Now, taking these solutions globally, okay, I think it will happen in time. It's just that there are certain partnerships in India which are very specific to India, given the fact that probably we don't have an ONDC anywhere else in the world. We don't have a UPI, at least now, yet, in its true form anywhere else in the world. So the point I'm just trying to make is that we partner with fintechs. We are very open to partnering with fintechs, and we always have that lens of, can we really take it global across multiple countries?
Thank you so much. I think we have to wrap. Do we have time for questions? Couple of questions? Probably one question. Yes, please.
We can just take one question right now. So ladies and gentlemen, anybody who has a question, please. Can we have a microphone right there, please?
Panel and the subject that we are discussing is, I think you are a very small part of the ecosystem. Payments are going through banking system in any case, but there is an unorganized market and there's an organized market. The way the banks look at it, mostly post-shipment. If you're looking at a B2B space. Now we can turn around and say everything comes in the post-shipment. But then there is a very large segment in this market which is not getting funded by you guys. So that actually is hidden from you. So when we are talking about the ecosystem, we should be looking at bringing or converting the unorganized, using the fintech, and bringing it into the organized sector. And that would be the game changer here.
Thank you so much, and that's a wrap.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so very much, sir. And thank you to...
I'll just take 30 seconds. So taking that cue, I think it's very important that the unorganized, untapped market, which still needs a lot of data and credit rating, credit scoring, once that comes into the picture, all of them can be pulled into the banking stream. So I think lots of things are happening definitely with the Treads platform coming into the picture. There's a risk underwriting developing a lot better. So I think from a point A to point B, especially in B2B, it's not cash and carry, it's always A to B or B to A. So I think the transformation definitely will take place. I see this as a decade of transformation from the B2B payments. And thank you so much, and thank you for the attention. Thank you.